think we're good. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Calling this public hearing to order. I'm Jonathan Fair. I'm a member of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks, and I'll be the hearing officer for today's hearing. Seated next to me are Deanna Cavallo, head of the Historic Preservation staff of the Bureau of Citywide Systems and Historic Preservation, the Department of Planning and Development, and Suzanne Hilal, Assistant Corporation Counsel of the Real Estate and Land Use Division of the city's law department, who is the commission's counsel for today's public hearing. I'll now go ahead and summarize the nature of today's hearing. The Commission on Chicago Landmarks was established and is governed by the Municipal Code of Chicago. The procedures for today's public hearing are contained in Article 2 of the Commission's rules and regulations governing hearings on landmarks designations. The purposes and duties of the Commission are set forth in the Municipal Code and include the identification, preservation, protection, enhancement, and encouragement of the continued utilization of and the rehabilitation of such areas, districts, places, buildings, structures, works of art, and other objects having a special historical, community, architectural, or aesthetic interest or value to the city of Chicago and its citizens. The commission's carried out this mandate by recommending to the city council that specific areas, district, places, buildings, structures, works of art, and other objects be designated as official Chicago landmarks. The commission bases its recommendations on the 7 criteria set forth in section 2-120-620 of the municipal code and the integrity of the criterion set forth in section 2-120-630 of the municipal code. The purpose of today's hearing is for the commission to receive relevant facts and information to assist the commission on deciding whether to recommend that the Erie Street Row meets the criteria set forth in section 2-120-620. The format of the hearing will be as follows. First, Deanna Cavallo will review the chronology of events related to the proposed designation that have led to today's hearing. Then I will rule on requests for party status to the hearing by property owners as well as other individuals or organizations. After that, the commission staff will make a presentation summarizing the preliminary landmark recommendation for the proposed designation of the Erie Street Row. After the staff presentation, property owners or other individuals who have been granted party status will have the opportunity to ask questions of the staff. Then those granted party status by me will be able to make a presentation regarding the proposed landmark designation. Lastly, any members of the public who wish to make brief statements concerning the proposed landmark designation may do so. All property owners or their representatives have the right to make a statement for or against the proposed designation. They also have the right to ask questions of the commission staff after the completion of their presentation. The Landmarks Ordinance also allows property owners and other individuals and organizations to request status as a party to the hearing. Parties to the hearings proceedings can make longer and more detailed presentations for or against proposed landmark designation that can include submitting photographs and other documents, as well as presenting testimony from their own witnesses. Parties may also question any other party's witnesses and question the commission staff member who summarized the preliminary landmark recommendation. Only those who want to make a more detailed presentation beyond a statement or a question need to request party status. That's the blue form. So those wishing to request party status by the presentation should fill out a blue form, appearance form, and return it to a member of the staff. And those forms, as you all probably saw, are by the table at the door. Keep moving. If you wish to be a party and you have filled out a blue appearance form requesting party status, I'll call on each of you in turn and consider your party requests. If you have not filled out a blue appearance form but wish to be a party, please do so now. Otherwise, property owners, representatives, and members of the general public who wish to make statements in support of the proposed landmark designation should fill out a pink appearance form, giving their name and address of their property or the organization they represent, if any. And property owners or the representatives and members of the general public who wish to make statements in opposition of the proposed landmark designation should fill out a yellow appearance form that's by the door. Those forms are available from the staff and should be completed and returned to a staff member as well. I want to note finally that the commission's rules and regulations limit presentations at this hearing to information relevant to whether or not the proposed designation meets criteria for Chicago landmark designation. Support. Information relating to the zoning, permit applications, building code, potential economic impacts are not to be heard during these proceedings. Now I'll ask Deanna Cavallo to outline the chronology of events relating to the proposed landmark designation of the Erie Street Row that have led up to this public hearing and incorporate the commission's document that are relevant to the proposed designation into the record. But maybe we'll give a moment for folks at the table that are filling out their forms, just complete that before you get going. If you all can, once you finish those, you can just submit it to the staff. Okay.
Sorry.
We're
Fine.
good.
Thank you, Commissioner. On July 30, 2024, the Bureau of Citywide Systems and Historic Preservation received an application to demolish the 4-story brick and stone building located at 161 East Erie Street, known as the Erie Street Row, the building. The building was ranked orange in the Chicago Historic Resources Survey and was therefore subject to the 90-day demolition delay ordinance. As is standard practice, staff evaluated the building for possible designation and determined that it met criteria for landmark designation. Subsequent to the evaluation on September 27, 2024, the owner requested that the demolition application be voided, and the Department of Buildings voided the application on the same day. At its regular meeting of October 3, 2024, the Commission on Chicago Landmarks Commission approved a preliminary landmark recommendation, the preliminary recommendation for designation of the building as a Chicago landmark. The commission found that the building appeared to meet 3 of the 7 criteria for designation, as well as the integrity criterion identified in the Chicago Landmarks Ordinance, Municipal Code of the City of Chicago, Section 212580. The preliminary recommendation, identified as Commission Document 1, initiate the consideration process for further study and analysis of the possible landmark designation of the building. As part of the preliminary recommendation, the commission preliminarily identified the significant historical and architectural features of the building as all exterior elevations, including roof lines of the building, the 3-story common brick boiler house addition and 1-story common brick garage at the rear south elevation of the building are devoid of architectural treatment. The commission may approve demolition of these additions to support new uses of the building. The foregoing is not intended to limit the commission's discretion to approve other changes. For purposes of Section 12740 of the Municipal Code governing permit review, the following additional guidelines shall also apply. In recognition of the building's location in the urban core with some of the city's highest building density, including high rises adjacent and within close proximity of the building, the commission may approve visible additions to the building. The commission's review of proposed work should ensure that the historic features of the building are preserved long-term while allowing reasonable change and flexibility to meet continuing and new needs, whether related to the continued current uses of the building or in accommodating future uses. Visible additions may be approved that are set back from the front property line to a depth of approximately 1/2 of the building lot, so that the historic building continues to read as an independent structure. Any visible addition should read as a separate volume rather than an extension of the historic structure, and the overall height and mass of the addition shall be evaluated based on the specific circumstances of the subject property and its immediate context. As part of the preliminary recommendation, the commission adopted a preliminary summary of information dated October 3, 2024, and identified as Commission Document 2. The Department of Planning and Development, on behalf of the commission, notified the owners of the building of the preliminary recommendation in a letter dated October 4, 2024, which is identified as Commission Document 3. At its regular meeting of November 7, 2024, the commission received a statement identified as Commission Document 4 from Sierra Boatwright, Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Development, stating that the proposed landmark designation of the building supports the city's overall planning and economic development goals and is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans. In a letter dated November 8, 2024, the commission officially requested consent to the proposed landmark designation from the owner of the building. A copy of the letter, which requested the return of an enclosed written consent form indicating consent or non-consent by December 23, 2024, is identified as Commission Document 5. The letter also notified the owner that they could request a 120-day extension to respond to the commission's request. In a letter dated November 16, 2024, identified as Commission Document 6, the owner requested a 120-day extension to respond to the commission's request. The commission responded with the letter dated November 18, 2024, identified as Commission Document 7, that the extension was granted, extending the request for consent period until April 22nd, 2025. As of the end of the request for consent period, the property owner has not responded to the commission's request for consent. Without written consent from the owner of the property, Section 2120-650 of the Chicago Landmarks Ordinance requires the commission to hold a public hearing on the preliminary recommendation with respect to the designation of the building as a Chicago landmark. In a letter dated April 23, 2025, identified as Commission Document 8, the commission notified the owner of the building of the public hearing being held today. A notice of the hearing date was also posted as a sign in the public right-of-way in front of the building and was published as a legal notice in the Chicago Tribune. A certificate from the Tribune attesting to the publication on April 21, 2025 of the legal notice for today's public hearing date is identified as Commission Document 9. The public hearing notice was also posted on the Department of Planning and Development's website. A photo of a temporary notice sign posted in front of the building, May 1, 2025, is identified as Commission Document 10. Copies of photographs and text used in the commission staff's presentation at today's hearing are identified as Commission Document 11. Other correspondence, emails, and petitions received by the commission pertaining to the proposed designation are identified as Commission Document 12. That concludes my summary.
Thank you, Deanna. I would spend this time now to rule on request for party status. Having seen none, though, we may continue. It looks like there are a couple of. Thank you. Here. I just will share the note, having seen at least the request for statement coming from representatives from the owner, that property owner can still make a verbal statement during the public statement portion of the hearing, as well as after presentations by any parties, or may present for the record a written statement. Seeing that we, as I said before, have no request for party status, we will be able to move forward to the presentation by the commission staff. So we'll hear from Matt Crawford of the commission staff summarizing the preliminary landmark recommendation for the Erie Street Road. Next. Matt?
Thank you, Commissioner Fair. As Deanna mentioned, the Landmarks Commission last October voted a preliminary landmark recommendation for 161 East Erie, which we are calling the Erie Street Row. And that vote has occurred, and they preliminarily identified which criteria the commission thinks this building meets, as well as integrity, as well as a preliminary identification of significant features, which Deanna just mentioned. So my presentation is to go over what the commission saw in October and articulate why we think the building meets the landmark criteria. All right, for the technical, so here's our location, 161 East Erie, the 42nd Ward, near North Side community area. A closer view showing the building fronting on East Erie Street, just east of Michigan Avenue. You also see that in the outline of the building, there's some portions of the building that extend outward from the rear facade, and those are portions of the building that the commission hasn't deemed significant for preservation. In terms of criteria, the commission found in October, very preliminarily, that it meets criterion 1. For heritage, as the building really tells stories of how this neighborhood or this community area developed after the fire and how it evolved over time. We also think the commission has found that it's a building with a significant association to 2 people. That would be Johnson O'Connor, who studied how to measure a person's attitude or aptitudes to help them discern career paths, and his wife, who also contributed to that work, but she was also an architect of note. And then, of course, the commission found that the building meets criterion 4 for architecture. It's a 1870s row house. It's a pretty rare survivor for the near North Side. In terms of the heritage criterion, which really talks about history, the Erie Street Row reflects the historic evolution of this community, which began as an enclave of upper middle class residents, and including many members of the noteworthy McCormick family who built large mansions in the area before the fire. Of course, the fire, as you can see here, totally destroyed the community in 1871, but it bounced back pretty quickly. You can see here after the fire, this is a bird's eye view of the community published by Rand McNally. You can see a lot of houses had been rebuilt, very fine houses, many of them by members of the McCormick family, as well as churches and some taller buildings. So it was a desirable area in the late 19th century, and the Erie Street Row was really part of that post-fire reconstruction. Here is the oldest photograph we have of the building. Based on the car, it's probably from the 19-teens. We just don't know exactly when it was taken. We zoom in, we lose resolution, but there's the row on the right, kind of recessed from the street. See that there were stoops that led up to second floor entrances to each of what were originally 5 townhouses that were connected by party walls. We looked at records, like who was living here in the 1870s after it was built. We found a gentleman by the name of William Kwan. He was an Irish immigrant. He probably built the first house, which would be the one that's farthest away in the row. And then our best guess is he then developed the rest of the row after he moved into his townhouse. So we're guessing, we don't have permit records, that this row was built in the 1870s, probably 1877 or 1878. And, looking at directories, there were other people living in here. There was a gentleman by the name of Albert Morgan Day and his family. He was president of the Chicago Stock Exchange. A prominent attorney was here, John T. Noyes with his wife, as well as an alderman that served in the board for several years. So interesting lists of residents in the building, none of them super important, but we'll get to important people associated with this building. The near North Side began to change. What happened is the Gold Coast began to develop. It grew in status. It started to attract wealthy families from the near North Side up to the Gold Coast. And so the building had to pivot. Around 1910 and 1913, the entire row had been converted to an inn. You can see advertisements for the Greystone Inn at 153 to 168 East Erie. It's just kind of a trend. Many of the people that were living in the inn were boarders, so long-term residents of a hotel. And so then things changed again pretty radically for the near north side in the 1920s with the construction of the Michigan Avenue Bridge. Buildings east of Michigan Avenue were increasingly being converted from those kind of residential or hotel to newer uses or completely demolished altogether and replaced with more intensive buildings. As we know, Michigan Avenue developed at this time as a very fashionable boulevard. Prior to this, it was just simply a residential street. Erie Street survived this kind of period of transformation on the near north side. It avoided demolition by converting from the hotel to commercial and retail uses, catering to really creative businesses, creative enterprises that were tending to move out of the loop and settle in the near north side in the 1920s. And this became a neighborhood known as Tower Town due to its proximity to the water tower. And it really was an artist and bohemian enclave that flourished in the 20s. You could start to see as early as 1894 with the construction of Tree Studios that kind of planted the seed that would continue to grow. And, you know, obviously this community of artists and bohemians on the near north side is long gone. But it really was a little bohemian area in the 1920s. And we start to see these creative businesses moving into the Erie Street Row. And the first real big tenant that came into the building was in 1920. That was the J. Rowland K. Company. They were an international advertising firm. They leased 3 of the row houses. And in June, they, in 1920, got a building permit to basically take those 3 row houses and internally connect them. So creating openings in the masonry party walls for their offices. And you can also see that the elevated stoops that went to the second floor entrances were removed for the most part, except for the one to the far right. And entrances were then created at the first floor of the building. You can see in this photo from 1930 that these bay windows were added to the base of the building around what is now the main entrance. This is an interesting photo of the architecture firm of Philip B. Mayer, who was a significant Chicago architect. So he moved in here. He transformed one of the townhouses into his office, as you can see in the photo. You know, adding leaded glass windows and doing some other things, and it was all photographed by an architectural photographer. So he invested a lot. It wasn't just him. Between 1920 and when the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation moved into this building, we see Harcourt Brace had offices here. A large number of architects were renting space in the building, as you can see on the slide. Paul Schweiker was an important Chicago architect. There were also people allied with architecture firms like the renderer Edgar Bloomster. You had other specialists in development, lighting equipment, decoration. You had several artists that maintained studios in the building. Basically, fine artists had studios for painting and drawing. And there were other interesting places. Vassar House was a restaurant run by women who had graduated from Vassar. The profits from the restaurant were used to create a scholarship fund so that other young women could go to Vassar. There were couturiers in the building. There were art galleries, fashion schools. So it was very much a creative building, and that really reflects not just this building, but what was happening in the neighborhood at this time from the 1920s up to the 50s. In terms of criterion 4 for architecture, the commission found that it's a very fine example of a very early party wall row house with a uniform design. Though painted, the front elevation is constructed of Joliet limestone, Chicago's earliest building stone. Some detailed views, you've got windows and door openings have arched heads, and they're topped with projecting keystones and size with ornament. The horizontal joints between the stone units are exaggerated. The vertical joints are kind of diminished, so you get this banded quality across the facade. You've got its original pressed metal cornice. All of this stuff is a character defining feature of the Italian style of architecture. And then, as I mentioned, in 1920, these steel bay windows were added to the front of the building. That's obviously a change. It's not original, but it's certainly a historic change that has achieved significance in its own right. As you can see, as I mentioned, the stoops were removed and the entrances were dropped to sidewalk grade. And those also are significant changes that reflect the building's kind of transformation from residential to creative, building for creative businesses. So then the commission also found that the building is associated with significant people, specifically Johnson O'Connor and Eleanor Manning O'Connor, husband and wife. Johnson O'Connor founded the Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation, which has maintained a branch of its human engineering laboratory at the building since 1952, as well as his wife, Eleanor Manning O'Connor, who is an accomplished architect in her own right, and who also promoted her husband's research on women's aptitude for careers in science and architecture. Basically, she was an early promoter of what we now call STEM. Johnson O'Connor was a polymath. He was raised in Chicago. He went to Harvard and got engineering degrees there. He did postgraduate work in astronomy and metallurgy, and then he joined the Lynn Works of the massive General Electric company in 1922. The head of Lynn Works at GE realized that the company was spending an enormous amount of time testing all of its products, all of the materials that it put into its products, but they didn't test job applicants or people that they were promoting. So the head of the Lynn Works tasked O'Connor with developing a testing program. At GE, Johnson, in his papers, recalled the case of an employee who did not perform well in several positions. All of the positions she had tried required a lot of manual dexterity. And then he put her through a testing regimen and realized that she really didn't have great manual dexterity, but she was excellent in observation. So she was moved to a different line of work at the company in inspection. She performed well. She benefited from the testing, got promotions and salary increases. And GE, of course, increased efficiencies and employee retention with this kind of work. In 1931, Johnson O'Connor married Eleanor Manning, a pioneer in architecture. Here she is in 1914. It's an interesting photo when you look at photos taken in 1890s or even 1914. People really didn't smile like this. We do this now. It's really an interesting photo. Just beaming. She was the first woman to graduate from MIT in architecture. She was a founding member of the nation's second only women-owned architecture firm. In addition to architecture, she took an active role in her husband's research on women's aptitude. In this article that she wrote for the Simmons Review, she was explaining that the aptitude tests that her husband was doing and that she was studying showed that women were well suited to careers in architecture, and later she would expand that to careers in medicine and science. The work of the Chicago branch of the Human Engineering Laboratory was picked up in the local press, particularly by the Tribune, in a career advice column for women written by Ruth McKay, known as the White Collar Girl. In the 1940s and 50s, McKay promoted Johnson O'Connor's research that showed in several areas women consistently scored higher in certain areas of aptitude than men. That was in the 50s. No one was doing that. After success at GE and academia, Johnson O'Connor expanded his testing program to the public to help young people and adults discern career paths. He called his testing facilities human engineering laboratories. He opened the first branch of what has become a national network here. This is 347 Beacon Street. It's a landmark, currently a landmark building in Boston's Back Bay Landmark District. My research has found that Johnson O'Connor preferred to locate his centers in historic residential buildings. And I haven't found direct documentation, but it's Eleanor Manning O'Connor, his wife. She specialized in restoring and historic preservation of residences. So it seems to me that she might have influenced where he was buying and locating the branches for his organization. Now, I'll show you what they did in Chicago. So in 1938, the foundation came to Chicago to open a branch. That year, Frances Glessner Lee, the daughter of John and Frances Glessner, donated the family's house at 1800 South Prairie Avenue to the Armour Institute of Technology, which is now IIT. And IIT then said to Johnson O'Connor, why don't you come to Chicago, open a branch in the Glessner house. In addition to testing here at what would soon become one of Chicago's earliest designated landmarks, the O'Connors opened the house to young people or anyone that just wanted to come and see it. And Eleanor Manning O'Connor actually built up an architecture library in the house. And some of the students that came for testing were able to see the house and maybe be influenced by the library, and who knows, become inspired to pursue a career in architecture. And then they moved here in 1945. This was the Second Empire, huge mansion. It's built by Cyrus McCormick in 1879. It was very close to the Erie Street Row. This was replaced in, I think in the late 50s or 60s by the offices of the Chicago Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. But the foundation was here until the building was demolished. And then they moved to where they are now, the Erie Street Row, less grand than some of the other earlier locations, but still a pretty dignified building. So they clearly had interest in historic buildings, particularly interest in keeping their centers in residential settings, not in institutional places. Another fantastic example of a branch, a building that they owned until very recently. The foundation recently sold this building. This is the Fabry Mansion in New York City. It was built by the Vanderbilt family in 1899. They had the foundation. This was their New York branch of the testing centers. Recently sold it. I think it's now Japanese. In terms of integrity, the commission's October vote preliminary found that yes, the building does have integrity. The commission acknowledges, of course, that two of the westernmost townhouses have been demolished in the 60s to make way for the William Blair building, which is a modernist building on Michigan Avenue. So two of the five are lost. Three 3 of the 5 remain. Other aspects of integrity are that it's what remains is pretty much very intact from the 1878 construction up to 1920 alterations. The original cornice is still there. Most of the original windows are still there, although these do show signs of deterioration. There are certainly those 1920 bay windows. They are definitely in need of attention. But for a building that's well over 100 years old, it's held up pretty well. A building is located in 42nd Ward, and so far Alderman Riley has been in support of moving forward with landmarking. As Deanna mentioned, it's a very elaborate definition of significant features that the commission has adopted in October, with the fundamental being all exterior elevations and roof lines of the building. And then acknowledging that these rear portions of the building really are not visible from the street. They're not, and they don't have any architectural treatment that merits preservation. So these could be demolished. And the commission further recommended that a visible addition could be built behind and to a degree on top of the historic building, but maintaining a setback of 50, the front of that addition would need to be set back at least 50% of the lot. Not 50%
of the lot, okay.
of the lot. So the reason for that flexibility is that we wanted, the commission wanted to offer the owner some flexibility. This kind of flexibility has been extended to other very similar landmark buildings in the near north side. So it was only fair that it also be extended to this situation. So that's really the end of my presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions from the owner's representative or hearing officer.
Thanks, Matt. Maybe before we get to any questions, do you think there was at least one person that came in the room and just wanted to make a note to make sure didn't sign in, just to sign in? Although I'm no longer, just out of fairness to everyone else, I'm no longer considering party status, but if you want to make a statement in support or in opposition to the landmark designation, you can fill out either the pink or the yellow slip, just so you know. Those are all by the door. Great. After that little bit of housekeeping, are there any questions from the owner? Okay, excellent. All right. Well, we will continue moving forward. Seeing that we have no parties, we'll move right into statements from the property owners and members of the general public. We'll begin first with statements from the property owners and their representatives. I do just want to share just some housekeeping again, just in general. Statements made in favor or in opposition to the proposed landmark designation. You should have filled out one of the pink slips. I think everyone did that, or one of the yellow slips. So if that is forthcoming from the table, we'll collect that. Just out of a little bit of transparency, just sharing for the people wishing to speak from the general public. We'll have an allotment roughly about 3 minutes, but I do want to give a little bit more time just for the property owner and their representatives. So that being said, head over to the property owner.
Thank you, Commissioner Fair, Gianna, and Marks. My name is Madeline Daring. I am the one of the representatives of the Johnson Connor Research Foundation. We have not responded to the request for consent because we're unable to do so at this time. That said, we continue to work to achieve agreement on the final designation language, which we're working on with the Alderman and landmark staff and preservation. We have no objection to the historic significance, and we've agreed to all preservation efforts required by landmark staff. However, the 50% setback for a development already set back from the lot line leaves us with less than the minimum usable floor plate for a future redevelopment. this becomes critical for us, because as Matt showed the other properties, Johnson O'Connor Research Foundation owns, we've been selling them in order to provide funding, goes directly back into the mission of the foundation, which is the testing. Part of, and Matt, forgive me, I'm not sure if this was in the report, but Johnson O'Connor did assemble all of these buildings in major cities, brand buildings as investments. So he was pretty savvy way back when, buying these beautiful, large properties so that when the time came, he would be able to sell them and then put that cash back into the foundation. So from 1950, they've occupied the site and they've had quite a run. So that was a pretty good, I don't even want to call it a guess at this point. Right, that was some incredible planning. So we're marketing this site, and we have been, because we can no longer care for it. Years, those of you that have taken tours, years of deferred maintenance have resulted in floors of the building being unusable and they're vacant. Today, the building does not even function as Johnson O'Connor intended. The testing functions have been moved off-site due to building conditions. There's, most notably, there's no air conditioning. So we can't have folks testing in a structure that it isn't comfortable. Ownership is going to continue to market the property in search of a developer with vision on how to reimagine the landmark, but with a profitable use. The only way this historic building is actually saved is through reuse. As was stated in Commissioner Boatwright's letter, 161 East Erie stands in support of the department's planning and economic goals. So to that end, we would ask the landmark staff and the commission to keep an open mind and consider those economics, since there's nothing more impactful to the future of this landmark and others. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I don't know if I take questions, but you tell me what's next.
No, I do. No questions, just your statement on the, thank you for that. Okay. We'll continue to move forward. Next, we'll hear statements from members of the public in favor of the proposed landmark designations. Those are the folks that submitted a pink slip. I think we have exactly a great spot for you all to stand. So as I call you out, if you could just make sure that you speak up so that you're heard. I'd ask that you provide your name, address, and organization that you represent, and before giving your statement in roughly 3 minutes. So we'll start with the first one that I have here from Gail Spring.
Okay, my name is Gail Spreen. I live at 440 North McClure Court, Unit 1011 in Chicago, in Streeterville. And I am co-chair of the Land Use Development Task Force for SOAR, the Streeterville Organization of Active Residents. And I come before you today to present SOAR's support for preserving and landmarking the building at 161 East Erie in the Streeterville neighborhood. We feel it's very important to protect our vintage buildings that bring history and character to Streeterville. The 161 East Erie building is a building which is occupied with businesses. It offers unique commercial and office space opportunities in the neighborhood, which is dominated by institutional high rises. The charm of the 161 East Erie building is the scale and setback. The community is supporting this landmark recommendation, and we are committed to working with the Landmarks Commission, Preservation Chicago, and Landmarks Illinois to make sure this building is protected. Our older buildings in Streeterville are vanishing, and they give us an understanding of history and a look into the past that no other documents can provide. People learn from old places, information that is not accessible to them in other ways. They add the charm and character to the neighborhood. The building at 161 East Erie definitely gives us a glimpse into the past when Streeterville was just being built. So respectfully respectfully request that the Commission on Chicago Landmarks grant landmark designation to this significant building, a historic structure we feel should be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rain. And we'll also, we've got the written
Yeah.
statement as well, and we'll make sure it's part of the record. Okay, moving next, Suzanne German.
Hi, I'm Suzanne German. I'm the Director of Investment at Landmarks Illinois. And on behalf of Landmarks Illinois, I would like to express our support for the landmark designation of the Erie Street Row at 161 East Erie Street. Most likely constructed during the 1870s, the Erie Street Row is an outstanding example of Italianate architecture built in an enormously significant time in Chicago's history, the rebuilding of the city after the Great Chicago Fire. As is commonly known, almost nothing in this area of the city survived that event. The buildings that were constructed in the aftermath of the fire are therefore our most tangible links to that history and essential to understanding how Chicago refashioned itself. Many, if not most, Chicagoans are familiar with some of the lore surrounding the Chicago fire, but probably fewer realize that pieces of this history are still to be found in our built environment, visible to anyone who walks by. Sadly, fewer and fewer of these places remain. Streeterville today is dominated by glass and steel high-rises. Last year, 2 other buildings of this time period at 207 West Superior and 720 North Wells came under the wrecking ball. Landmark designation for 161 East Erie is an opportunity to protect one of our remaining post-fire resources for the benefit of Chicago's collective story. Thank you for considering our comments.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Next, Ward Miller.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Ward Miller. I'm the Richard H. Driehaus, DRIEHAUS Executive Director of the nonprofit group Preservation Chicago. We very much support this landmark designation of this wonderful 1870s era Italianate style house or group of buildings, now one building. We understand that this is really an amazing structure that dates right after the Chicago fire, relates so beautifully to some of our historic landmarks like the old water tower and the pumping station, one of those most recognizable older buildings that survived the fire in our city and located in our central area. We feel that the structure is beautifully crafted, speaking to its ornament and its facade. It has lasted for almost 150 years, which is really remarkable. As Suzanne German just mentioned, we lost 2 remarkable buildings in the River North District that should have been, in our opinion, part of the landmark district at 720 North Wells. They're being replaced by buildings that we don't think are of the same quality. So it's really important to save these historic structures. Most valuable, in our opinion, are the components of the building that are to be landmarks. That's the front facade, the setback, the alterations that have been made to the building from the 1920s. We do believe this adds human scale to the buildings, to the district. And it also provides a place for small businesses. This is an affordable building as it exists right now. And that's really remarkable. It does add to the charm, the scale, and it's a visual reminder of what Pine Street and Streeterville and the Gold Coast, the near North District was. So it gives people a perspective. If we were to lose all these buildings and put up one high-rise building after another, we'd lose a sense of scale, a sense of place. These buildings are very special and they're unique to Chicago. And we are America's city of architecture, and we need to recognize this. So we are progressive. We believe some of these buildings have to work. We understand that there are some perhaps proposed changes in the future to make them work and function. But we are most importantly interested in preserving this landmark building and the features that are determined to be significant. So thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next, Marianne Petro.
And so I'm Marianne Petro, and I am officially one of the co-owners of the East Erie Gallery that is in the 161 East Erie building. And basically, I didn't really have anything here as evidence, but what I really wanted to say was about the public opinion of what the house is, what the building represents to, I think, a lot of different people. A lot of people who come to the gallery are actually drawn in because of the building, and they have such a strong interest in the building. And I think many times I've become more of a tour guide about the building, about Johnson O'Connor, about the tree house down the street, even talking about Glessner House and how that incorporates into Streeterville and just Chicago in general, and about the fire. And people are always asking me questions about the structure. So I'm proud to be in that building, and I love talking about it all the time. So unfortunately, we're in the part that if it does get repurposed, will probably get chopped off. If it does, because it's in the back now. Yeah, we're in the back of the building, so I have a feeling, but no matter what happens to our gallery, we want to see the building stand and continue. Because it's just such a beautiful building to be in, and like I said, the public actually loves it. And a lot of times people just come over from like the hospital or other areas just to kind of get a little break or a respite, just to be in there for the charm. So that was my main concern. I also do have a question for you, Jen. Okay.
Deanna's there.
Oh,
I'm Adam.
Madeline.
Deanna's there.
Oh, the one who, you're Johnson O'Connor,
Yes.
though, right, okay.
Well, thank you, Ms. Petro.
Is that too,
Oh, no, you're fine. We'll keep moving. Paul, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right, Davey? Davey? Thank you.
I was at the other hearing and basically raised my hand for supporting preservation status at Next Point. I think that the sort of the big nut about why I am a big fan of it is that it distinguishes the neighborhood in a long tradition of serving the arts and arts related businesses. I think I can't say more than Gail about the history of the neighborhood being rich and very positive, supporting the arts, whether it's music, poetry, painting, and with merry animals. So that arts tradition defines the neighborhood. So pretty much on record, I'm raising my hand again to keep our neighborhood different than other neighborhoods because of the arts. The business across from me, the Picture Frame Shop, is a beauty shop that has also been there. There's been an art gallery, a picture frame shop, and a beauty shop there, a real neighborhood location, go-to destination from years gone by. And Dennis has been there for over 40 years, and he wanted me to say this. So I'd like to go on record for Dennis, another owner. So my name is Dennis Petrushkovich. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I am proud business owner in the historic 161 building. I am writing to ask you stand with the Chicago Historic Preservation Division, which Ward Miller spoke highly of, and support landmark designation. He finds it like we do as a neighborhood spot where people come and it's not a it's a personal, there's a personal touch in the transactions. So that's, I think, all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. Okay, next I have Michiko Ram.
Hello. Well, I wasn't prepared to come and say anything. I was prepared more to observe this meeting, and I consider Miriam Petro over here. She's a very good friend, also a client. My name is Michiko Ram. My company's Metal Space Inc. I've been in the architecture and interior
Okay, I'm
design
sorry.
industry before.
I'm trying to hear every
Oh.
word you say.
Okay.
So your company is.
Oh, okay.
And you can move up. Thank you.
I'm gonna take a close.
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry. Oh, that's deep. Okay, that's all right. Yeah, my name is Michiko Rowe. My company is Metro Space Inc. I live in the Streeterville area. I'm currently in 680 Lakeshore Drive. And I've been in the architecture and interior design industry for many years and seen it drastically change. That's still drastically changing, thanks to AI. But Marianne Petro over here is a good friend of mine, and I also consider her a client. And interesting story about how we met, because yeah, I won't make this too long. So long story short, I used to go to a chiropractic service that was on Ohio and Baltimore Clerk called Align Body or something. I believe it's a chain. And long story short, I got fed up with this formulaic approach that they did. They kept on asking me on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel? And so I eventually left because it just got ridiculous. And so there is another chiropractic service in 161 East Erie, on the same floor as Marianne's gallery. So, and so I went there. I'm happy with them. They're not a chain. I'm trying my best to not get too attached to chain stores because it's more than enough. And that's how I eventually met Marianne, because I happened to have an appointment at the chiropractic office when her gallery space was open. So we met, and yeah, we had a wonderful conversation about our gallery, about the building, about about the preservation of the building. And I told her I thought it was really refreshing, because coming from architecture and design, where so much of the software applications is really coming from Autodesk or Adobe, and everything's just become formulaic in that respect in terms of just design in general. It is nice to see these nice buildings that are not cookie cutter, that are not ugly glass and steel structures, and which is also why I appreciate living in 680 Lakeshore Drive. I think it's also a beautiful building, and it was a building that was made to last. I truly believe that, because my husband and I, we looked at a lot of condo properties that were in these much newer buildings. Didn't have a lot of confidence that they were going to last. And I think it's important to really to preserve and repurpose and reuse all these beautiful properties that we already have. Why not? They were made to last. Well, I don't know what forever means, but they were made to last for a long time. Clearly they have. They still look much nicer than any new properties and new buildings that's coming out, because quite frankly, I jokingly say, oh, I can tell if that building was designed in this Autodesk Revit software or something, because it really looks like that. And yeah, it's important to have a balance. And I'm hoping, although I'll probably lose this battle, but there is this vast grashy space that's in front of our building on McClurg. Our unit overlooks this large grassy space. And I'm afraid one day that'll be another glass and steel building. And well, if it is, there's not much I can do about it. But so on that note, it would be nice to see these other nice buildings that are not glass and steel buildings, that are beautiful, and we're meant to be beautiful, and will continue to be beautiful if we take good care of them. And also to have wonderful businesses and the business owners and the clientele that they cater to, and the clientele that they appreciate having, a nice neighborhood experience with.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rowe.
Oh, thank you. I was totally unprepared for that.
Oh, no. All right, that is the last of the statements in support. We have no statements in opposition to the landmark status, so we will move forward to our adjournment. That effectively concludes today's public hearing. The commission will consider the entire record, including the transcript of today's hearing, at its regular meeting on June 5th, 2025. That's Thursday. And determine whether to make a final recommendation to City Council on the proposed landmark designation of the Erie Street Row. This meeting is open to the public. It will take place at 12:45 p.m. once again on June 5th. at City Council Chambers, which is at the second floor of this building. That wraps it up for today. Thank you all for making it out and for your statements.
Thank you very much. Speaking, just following.
Anyone wants to do me?
Okay.
Another one coming up.
Thank you.
Oh, good.